The blizzard had come out of nowhere that December evening in 1882, transforming the rugged landscape around Redding, California, into a whiteout nightmare that no one had seen coming. Quinn Jameson urged his horse through the knee-deep snow toward his ranch gate, his breath forming thick clouds in the frigid air as he squinted against the driving wind that felt like it could strip the skin right off his bones. Through the swirling white chaos, he spotted something dark crumpled against the wooden fence posts, and his heart lurched when he realized it was a person, a woman by the looks of the tattered dress, barely visible beneath the accumulating snow. He dismounted in one fluid motion, his boots sinking deep as he rushed forward and dropped to his knees beside her, brushing away the powder that had already begun to bury her alive. Her lips were blue, her skin pale as death itself, and for a terrifying moment he thought he was too late until he pressed his fingers to her throat and felt the faintest flutter of a pulse beneath the icy flesh. Quinn didn't waste another second. He scooped her into his arms, shocked at how light she was, how her body felt like holding a bundle of frozen twigs that might snap if he squeezed too hard. She didn't stir, didn't make a sound, and that frightened him more than anything as he carried her toward his horse. Getting her up into the saddle while unconscious proved challenging, but Quinn had wrestled steers twice his weight and managed to position her in front of him, holding her tight against his chest as he kicked his mount into motion. The ranch house was only a quarter-mile ahead, but it felt like crossing an entire territory in that blinding storm. When he finally burst through his front door, the warmth from the fireplace hit him like a wall, and he kicked the door shut behind them before carrying his frozen burden straight to the hearth. He laid her on the braided rug as close to the flames as he dared, then rushed to grab every blanket he owned from the bedroom. His hands shook as he worked to remove her wet clothes, trying to maintain some sense of decency, while knowing that leaving her in those frozen garments would kill her as surely as the storm. He averted his eyes as much as possible, wrapping her in the dry blankets until she looked like a cocoon. Then he built up the fire until it roared and crackled, filling the small main room with blessed heat. Quinn knelt beside her, rubbing her hands between his own calloused palms, trying to bring some warmth back into those frozen fingers. Her face was beautiful despite the pallor of near death, with delicate features framed by long dark hair that was starting to thaw and drip onto the rug. She looked young, maybe 22 or 23, and he found himself wondering what in God's name she had been doing out in that storm, so far from town with no horse, no supplies, nothing but the clothes on her back. It took nearly an hour before she stirred, a soft moan escaping her lips as consciousness slowly returned. Quinn had been heating water on the stove, planning to make her some tea, when he heard the sound and rushed back to her side. Her eyelids fluttered, and then she was looking up at him with eyes the color of honey, confusion and fear warring in their depths. "Easy now," Quinn said softly, keeping his voice gentle despite his own racing heart. "You're safe. I found you at my gate, half frozen to death. You're in my house, by my fire. Nobody's going to hurt you." She tried to speak, but her teeth started chattering so violently that no words could form. Quinn grabbed a cup of the warm water, nothing too hot yet because he knew better than to shock her system, and he helped her sit up enough to take small sips. She clutched the blankets around herself, and he could see the moment when she realized she wasn't wearing her own clothes anymore. Her eyes went wide with panic. "I had to get you out of those wet things," Quinn explained quickly, holding up his hands. "You would have died otherwise. Your dress is drying by the fire, and I swear on my mother's grave that I was nothing but respectful. I'm Quinn Jameson. This is my ranch." The woman stared at him for a long moment, and he could see her taking his measure, deciding whether to trust him. Finally, she nodded slightly, taking another sip of water. When she spoke, her voice came out as barely more than a whisper, raw and painful sounding. "Luna," she managed. "Luna Abbott." "Well, Miss Abbott, you picked a hell of a night to be out walking," Quinn said, settling back on his heels. "What happened? Where were you headed?" Luna's eyes filled with tears that spilled down her cheeks, and Quinn felt his chest tighten at the sight. She shook her head, unable or unwilling to speak, and he didn't push. Whatever had brought her to his gate in the middle of a blizzard, it wasn't a happy story, and she had been through enough for one night. "Never mind that now," he said instead, standing and moving back to the stove. "Let me get you some proper tea, maybe some broth if you think you can keep it down. We'll worry about the rest tomorrow." He kept himself busy in the small kitchen area, giving her space while still keeping a careful eye on her. She didn't try to run or speak again, just sat huddled in those blankets watching the fire with a haunted expression that made Quinn want to find whoever had hurt her and teach them a very painful lesson about treating women with respect. But that wasn't his place, not yet, maybe not ever. Right now, his job was just to make sure she lived through the night. The storm continued to rage outside, the wind howling around the eaves and rattling the shutters. Quinn brought Luna a cup of hot tea sweetened with honey and a bowl of beef broth that had been simmering on his stove since morning. She accepted both with trembling hands, and he noticed that some color was finally starting to return to her cheeks. That was good. That meant the danger was passing. "Thank you," Luna whispered between sips of broth. "I thought I was going to die out there." "You nearly did," Quinn said honestly. "Another hour and you would have been frozen solid. What were you doing so far from town?" Luna's hands tightened around the bowl, her knuckles going white. "Running," she said simply. "I was running." Quinn waited, but she didn't elaborate, and he respected that. A woman didn't run out into a blizzard with nothing unless she had a damn good reason, and pushing her to talk about it before she was ready would only cause more harm. Instead, he grabbed another blanket for himself and settled into his worn armchair, keeping the fire stoked high. "Well, you don't have to run anymore," he said quietly. "Not tonight, anyway. Tonight you're safe here, and I give you my word that I'll keep you that way." Luna looked at him then, really looked at him, and Quinn felt something shift in the air between them. She was studying his face like she was trying to read his soul, searching for any sign of deceit or danger. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her, because she nodded slowly and turned back to her broth. They sat in silence for a while, the only sounds the crackling of the fire and the wind howling outside. Quinn found himself stealing glances at her when he thought she wasn't looking, intrigued by this mysterious woman who had literally fallen into his life. He had been alone on this ranch for 3 years now, ever since his father died and left him the property. It was a good life, a simple life, but it was lonely. He went to town once a week for supplies and maybe a drink at the saloon, but he had never been much for socializing. The cattle and the horses were his companions, and up until tonight, that had been enough. "I should have died," Luna said suddenly, her voice stronger now. "When I felt the cold taking me, when I couldn't walk anymore, I thought that was it. I thought I would just fall asleep and never wake up." "But you didn't," Quinn pointed out. "You made it to my gate. That took strength." "Or stubbornness," Luna replied, and there was the faintest hint of dark humor in her tone. "My mother always said I was too stubborn for my own good." "Stubbornness will keep you alive out here," Quinn said. "This is hard country. It doesn't forgive weakness." Luna finished her broth and set the bowl aside, pulling the blankets tighter around herself. "Where am I exactly? I mean, I know you said this is your ranch, but where?" "About 5 miles north of Redding," Quinn told her. "This is cattle country mostly." "My spread is modest, just a few hundred head, but it keeps me fed and gives me a roof over my head. Town's close enough for supplies, but far enough that I don't have to deal with people unless I want to." "Reading," Luna repeated, and he saw relief flash across her face. "I was trying to reach Reading. I had heard there were opportunities there, work for women who needed it." "There's work if you're willing to take it," Quinn confirmed. "Laundry, cooking, sometimes the general store needs help. What kind of work were you looking for?" Luna hesitated, and he saw shame creep into her expression. "Anything honest," she said finally. "Anything that would let me eat and have a place to sleep without having to depend on anyone." Quinn heard the weight behind those words, the history she wasn't sharing, and he made a decision right then and there. "Well, I can't speak to what's available in town, but I could use some help around here if you're interested." Luna's eyes snapped to his, wide with surprise. "You don't know anything about me." "I know you're a survivor," Quinn said. "I know you were desperate enough to run into a blizzard, which means whatever you were running from was worse than dying in the cold. I know you have manners and you're not stupid. That's enough for me." "I don't know anything about ranching," Luna admitted. "I'm not asking you to rope steers," Quinn said with a slight smile. "But a ranch has a lot of work that doesn't involve cattle, cooking, mending, keeping the house in order. I've been doing it all myself, and I'll be honest, I'm terrible at most of it. My clothes have more holes than fabric, and I've been eating the same 3 meals on rotation for 3 years because I can't cook worth a damn." Luna actually laughed at that, a small sound but genuine, and Quinn felt an unexpected warmth spread through his chest at the sound. "I can cook," she said, "and I know how to mend. My mother was a seamstress before she died. She taught me." "Then we might have ourselves an arrangement," Quinn said. "I'm not a rich man, but I can pay you a fair wage and you'd have your own room, all the food you can eat, and nobody would bother you out here. You could work for me until you get on your feet, save up some money, and then decide what you want to do next." Luna stared at him like he had just offered her the moon. "Why would you do that? You don't know me. I could be anyone. I could be dangerous." Quinn couldn't help it. He laughed, a deep rumbling sound that filled the small house. "No offense, Miss Abbott, but you weigh about as much as a feed sack and you were half dead an hour ago. I think I can handle whatever danger you might pose." "I'm serious," Luna insisted, but there was a hint of a smile playing at her lips now. "Why would you help me like this?" Quinn's expression sobered, and he met her eyes directly. "Because someone should have helped you before it got to the point where you were dying in a snowstorm. Because I know what it's like to be alone and struggling. Because it's the right thing to do." He paused, then added more softly, "Because I found you at my gate, and I'll be damned if I'm going to let you go back out there to face the cold and the world alone again." Luna's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they looked different, softer somehow. "You don't even know what I was running from," she whispered. "I don't need to," Quinn said firmly. "Whatever it is, whoever it is, they'll have to go through me to get to you. That's a promise." They looked at each other across the firelight, and something passed between them in that moment, something neither of them could name but both could feel. It was the beginning of trust, fragile as new ice on a winter pond, but real nonetheless. "All right," Luna said finally. "I'll work for you. But if I'm going to be here, I need you to understand something. I can't go back. I won't go back, no matter what." "Then you won't," Quinn said simply. "This is your home now for as long as you need it to be." The storm continued through the night, piling snow against the house until the windows were half buried. Quinn gave Luna his bed and took the floor by the fire, insisting despite her protests. He lay awake for a long time, listening to the wind and thinking about the strange turn his life had just taken. This morning he had woken up alone, facing another solitary winter on the ranch. Now there was a woman sleeping in his bed, a woman with secrets and pain in her eyes, a woman who needed protection and a fresh start. He didn't know what he was getting himself into, but Quinn had always trusted his instincts, and his instincts told him that finding Luna Abbott at his gate wasn't just chance. It was meant to be. When morning came, the storm had blown itself out, leaving behind a world transformed into white silence. Quinn rose stiffly from the floor and looked out the window at the drifts that had piled up against the fence posts and the barn. It would take most of the day just to dig out enough to tend to the animals. He started building up the fire, trying to be quiet, but the sound of him moving around woke Luna anyway. She emerged from the bedroom, wrapped in one of his shirts over the blankets, her long dark hair tangled around her shoulders. She looked better than she had last night, more color in her face, more life in her eyes, but there was still a fragility to her that made Quinn want to wrap her in cotton and keep her safe from the world. "Morning," he said. "How are you feeling?" "Sore," Luna admitted. "And tired." "But alive, which is more than I expected." "That's a good start," Quinn said. He gestured to the stove. "I was about to make some coffee and attempt breakfast. Fair warning, my cooking is likely to be worse than the blizzard." Luna actually smiled at that, and Quinn felt that strange warmth in his chest again. "Let me," she said. "If I'm going to be earning my keep, I might as well start now." "You should rest," Quinn protested. "You nearly died last night." "And sitting around thinking about it won't help," Luna countered. She moved to the kitchen area with more steadiness than he expected, surveying the limited supplies with a critical eye. "You weren't lying about the bachelor cooking situation. When was the last time you had a proper meal?" "Define proper," Quinn said, and Luna shook her head with amusement. "Never mind. I'll work with what you have. Go tend to your animals. I'll have breakfast ready when you get back." Quinn wanted to argue, wanted to insist that she take another day to recover, but the determined set of her jaw told him it would be pointless. Besides, she was right. Keeping busy was often better than dwelling on trauma. He pulled on his heavy coat and hat, wrapped a scarf around his face, and headed out into the crystalline morning. The cold hit him like a fist, stealing his breath despite his layers. The temperature must have dropped below zero during the night, and the snow crunched under his boots with every step. He made his way to the barn, grateful to find that the structure had held up well against the storm. His horses nickered in greeting, and the cattle he had brought in before the storm hit were huddled together for warmth but otherwise unharmed. He spent the next 2 hours feeding and watering the animals, checking them over for any signs of injury or frostbite, and mucking out stalls. It was hard, physical labor, but Quinn had always found peace in it. There was something meditative about the routine, the simple act of caring for creatures that depended on him. When he finally made his way back to the house, the smell that greeted him when he opened the door stopped him in his tracks. It smelled like heaven, like home, like something he hadn't experienced since his mother was alive. Luna stood at the stove, his oversized shirt rolled up at the sleeves, her hair tied back with a piece of string, and she was humming softly to herself as she cooked. "What is that?" Quinn asked, shrugging out of his coat. "Eggs, bacon, and I found some flour and made biscuits," Luna said, turning to look at him with a pleased expression. "Nothing fancy, but it's hot and it's edible, which seems to be an improvement over your usual fare." Quinn moved to the table where she had set 2 places, and his throat tightened unexpectedly at the simple domesticity of the scene. He couldn't remember the last time someone had set a table for him, had cooked for him, had made his house feel like something more than just 4 walls and a roof. They sat down together, and Quinn took his first bite of the biscuits. They were fluffy and buttery and absolutely perfect, and he made an involuntary sound of pleasure that made Luna laugh. "I take it they are acceptable?" she asked. "Acceptable," Quinn said after swallowing. "Miss Abbott, these are the best biscuits I've ever tasted. If this is you working with limited supplies, I can't imagine what you could do with a proper pantry." Luna's cheeks flushed with pleasure at the compliment. "Then I'll make you a list of things to pick up next time you go to town. If I'm going to cook for you, I need more than beans and bacon to work with." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, and Quinn found himself watching her between bites. In the morning light streaming through the window, she looked less like the broken, frozen woman from last night, and more like someone slowly coming back to life. There was still sadness in her eyes, still shadows that would take more than a good night's sleep to erase, but there was also something else. Hope, maybe, or at least the possibility of it. "Tell me about the ranch," Luna said after a while. "How long have you been here?" "My father bought this land in 1870, Quinn said. "Built the house and the barn with his own 2 hands. He was a tough man, hard as the land itself, but fair. He taught me everything I know about cattle and horses and surviving out here. When he died 3 years back, he left it all to me." "I'm sorry," Luna said softly. "Losing a parent is never easy." "What about you?" Quinn asked, then immediately regretted it when he saw her expression close off. "You don't have to answer that, I'm sorry," but Luna shook her head. "No, it's all right. You deserve to know at least something about the woman you've taken into your home." She took a deep breath, her fingers tightening around her fork. "My mother died 2 years ago. Fever took her. My father had passed when I was young, so she was all I had. After she died, I had nothing, no money, no family. I ended up working at a hotel in Sacramento." She paused, and Quinn waited, sensing there was more. "The owner, he was a man named Charles Brennan. At first he seemed kind, offered me good wages, a room to stay in. But after a few months, he started making demands. He said I owed him for his generosity, that he expected certain favors in return for his kindness." Luna's voice had gone flat, emotionless, the way people spoke when they were trying not to feel. "I refused. He didn't like that. He said I could either give him what he wanted, or he would make sure I never worked anywhere in Sacramento again." Quinn's hands clenched into fists on the table, but he kept his voice calm. "So you ran?" "I ran," Luna confirmed. "I took what little money I had saved and I left in the middle of the night. I was trying to get to Redding, thought I could start over somewhere he wouldn't find me. But I underestimated how far it was, and then the storm came, and I got turned around in the snow." She looked up at him then, her honey-colored eyes fierce. "I would have died rather than go back to him. I want you to understand that. Death was preferable to what he was asking of me." "You won't have to make that choice," Quinn said quietly. "Not now, not ever. If this Brennan comes looking for you, he'll find me instead, and I promise you, I won't be as kind as you were." Luna studied him for a long moment. "You mean that, don't you? You really would stand against a man you've never met to protect me?" "I gave you my word last night," Quinn said. "I don't give my word lightly, Miss Abbott." "Luna," she said softly. "If we're going to be living under the same roof, you should call me Luna." "Luna," Quinn repeated, and the name felt right in his mouth. "And you should call me Quinn. None of this Mr. Jameson business." They finished breakfast, and Luna insisted on cleaning up while Quinn went back out to continue digging out from the storm. It was backbreaking work, shoveling path after path through the deep drifts, but Quinn attacked it with unusual energy. Having someone to come back to, even just for a hot meal and conversation, made the labor feel less like drudgery and more like he was building something, preparing something. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Quinn would rise before dawn to tend the animals and manage the ranch work, while Luna transformed the house into something that actually felt like a home. She cleaned and organized, mended his torn clothes, and cooked meals that made him wonder how he had survived on his own cooking for so long. She was efficient and hardworking, never complaining about the isolation or the basic conditions of ranch life. But more than that, she was good company. In the evenings, after the work was done, they would sit by the fire and talk. Luna told him about growing up in San Francisco, about her mother's skill with a needle and thread, about the books she had read and the dreams she had once had. Quinn shared stories about his father, about the early days of the ranch, about the hard lessons the land had taught him. They were careful with each other, polite, maintaining appropriate boundaries. Luna had her room, Quinn had his space, and neither crossed the invisible line that separated employer from employee, rescuer from rescued. But something was growing between them nonetheless. Something neither of them acknowledged but both could feel in the lengthening glances, the accidental brushes of hands, the way they gravitated toward each other like moons caught in orbit. 2 weeks after the blizzard, Quinn made the ride into Redding for supplies. Luna had given him a list, along with specific instructions about quality and quantity that made him smile. She was taking her role seriously, treating the ranch like it was her own home to manage. He liked that about her, the way she threw herself into things completely. The town was busy, despite the cold, people hurrying about their business with scarves wrapped around their faces and their heads down against the wind. Quinn hitched his horse outside the general store and headed inside, grateful for the warmth. He was reading through Luna's list when he heard someone call his name. "Quinn Jameson, haven't seen you in a while." He turned to find Sheriff Tom Wilder approaching, a friendly smile on his weathered face. Tom was a good man, honest and fair, and Quinn considered him one of the few people in Redding he actually called a friend. "Been snowed in mostly," Quinn said, shaking the sheriff's hand. "That blizzard 2 weeks back hit hard." "Tell me about it," Tom said. "We had 3 people freeze to death that night and 2 more lost fingers or toes to frostbite. Worst storm I've seen in my 10 years wearing this badge." He paused, his expression turning more serious. "Say, you haven't heard anything about a missing woman, have you? Fellow from Sacramento came through about a week ago, asking questions. Said he was looking for a young woman with dark hair who ran away from his hotel. Name of Luna Abbott." Quinn kept his expression carefully neutral, though his heart started beating faster. "What did you tell him?" "Told him I hadn't seen anyone matching that description," Tom said. "He struck me as oily, if you know what I mean. The kind of man who smiles with his mouth but not his eyes. He said she stole money from him and he wanted to press charges, but something about his story didn't sit right with me." "Your instincts are usually good," Quinn said carefully. Tom looked at him directly, and Quinn saw understanding in his eyes. "If someone were protecting this woman, I'd tell them to be careful. Men like Charles Brennan don't give up easy when they think something belongs to them. But I'd also tell them that sometimes doing the right thing means standing between a predator and his prey. Consequences be damned." "Hypothetically speaking," Quinn said. "Hypothetically speaking," Tom agreed. "Now, you didn't happen to come across anyone during that blizzard, did you? Maybe someone who needed help." Quinn met his friend's eyes and made a decision. Tom was trustworthy, and having the law on their side could be useful if Brennan came back. "I found her frozen at my gate," he said quietly. "Another hour and she would have been dead. She's working for me now at the ranch. And before you ask, she told me about Brennan and what he wanted from her. The man's a predator, Tom, and I won't see her go back to him." Tom nodded slowly. "I figured it was something like that. The way Brennan talked about her like she was property instead of a person made my skin crawl." He clapped Quinn on the shoulder. "You're a good man, Quinn. Just keep your eyes open." Brennan said he was heading back to Sacramento, but men like that have a way of coming back around when you least expect it. I'll be ready if he does, Quinn promised. He finished his shopping, his mind working through possibilities and contingencies. Knowing that Brennan had been to Reading looking for Luna changed things. It meant she wasn't as safe as he had hoped, that the threat was more immediate than some distant worry. He would need to be more careful, more vigilant. When he got back to the ranch, Luna was hanging laundry on the line he had strung up in the barn, since it was too cold to dry anything outside. She turned when she heard him enter, her face lighting up with a smile that made his chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. "How was town?" she asked, helping him carry in the supplies. Quinn debated whether to tell her about Brennan, then decided she deserved to know. They unpacked the goods while he explained about his conversation with Sheriff Wilder, and he watched her face go pale as she processed the information. "He came looking for me," she whispered, sinking down into one of the kitchen chairs. "I knew he would, but I hoped maybe the storm, maybe the distance would be enough." Quinn knelt in front of her, taking her cold hands in his. "Listen to me, Luna. Tom Wilder is a good man and he's on our side. Brennan can't just drag you out of here without consequences. You're under my protection and you're safe here. I meant what I said that first night. You'll never be cold or alone again, and that includes being alone in facing that bastard." Luna looked at him and something in her expression shifted. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly. "I'm nobody to you, just a woman you found in the snow. Why risk so much for me?" Quinn opened his mouth to give her a simple answer, the easy one about duty and doing what was right, but the words that came out surprised them both. "Because when I look at you, I don't see nobody. I see someone brave enough to choose death over dishonor. I see someone who makes my house feel like a home for the first time in years. I see someone who makes me look forward to coming in from the cold." He paused, his thumb stroking over her knuckles. "I see someone I'm starting to care about more than I probably should." Luna's breath caught and tears spilled down her cheeks. "Quinn, I can't ask you to feel that way about me. I'm damaged, I'm being hunted. I'll only bring you trouble." "Then bring it," Quinn said fiercely. "I've spent 3 years alone on this ranch, going through the motions of living without actually feeling alive. These past 2 weeks with you have reminded me what it means to have something worth protecting, worth fighting for. So whatever trouble comes with you, I'll take it gladly." Luna pulled one hand free and touched his face, her fingers trembling against his bearded jaw. "You're a good man, Quinn Jameson, better than I deserve." "You deserve everything," Quinn said, "and I intend to make sure you get it." They stayed like that for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them, a line being crossed that neither of them could uncross. Then Luna leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, soft and tentative, and Quinn felt his entire world shift on its axis. The kiss was gentle, almost chaste, but it held the promise of something more, something neither of them was quite ready to name but both could feel growing between them like the first green shoots of spring pushing through winter snow. When they pulled apart, Quinn rested his forehead against hers, breathing in the scent of lavender soap and something uniquely Luna. "I'm falling in love with you," he admitted, the words coming out rough and honest. "I know it's too soon. I know it's probably crazy, but I need you to know that. Whatever happens, whatever comes, my feelings for you are real." Luna made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered. "I tried not to. I told myself it was just gratitude, just relief at being safe, but it's more than that, so much more." They kissed again, deeper this time, and Quinn felt like he was falling into something vast and terrifying and wonderful all at once. He had never been a man of strong emotions, had always prided himself on his steady, practical nature. But Luna made him feel things he had never experienced before, made him want things he had never allowed himself to dream about. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Quinn stood and pulled her to her feet. "We should probably slow down," he said, though every part of him wanted to do the opposite. "I don't want to rush you into anything you're not ready for." Luna nodded, her cheeks flushed and her lips swollen from kissing. "You're right. We should take this slow. But Quinn, I want you to know that what I feel for you has nothing to do with obligation or gratitude. This is real for me too." "I know," Quinn said, tucking a strand of her hair behind her ear. "I can feel it." The rest of the day passed in a kind of golden haze, both of them acutely aware of each other in a way they hadn't been before. Every glance felt charged with meaning. Every accidental touch sent sparks racing through their nerves. They went about their normal routine, but everything felt different now, weighted with possibility and promise. That night after dinner, they sat by the fire together, closer than they had allowed themselves before. Luna's head rested on Quinn's shoulder and his arm was wrapped around her waist, holding her against his side. It felt natural, like they had been doing this for years instead of hours. "Tell me about your dreams," Quinn said softly. "Before everything happened with Brennan, what did you want from life?" Luna was quiet for a moment, thinking. "I wanted what my mother had," she said finally. "A home of my own, a family, someone to share my life with. Simple things, I guess, but they always seemed so far out of reach. We never had much money, and after she died, I was just trying to survive. I forgot what it felt like to want things, to hope for things." "And now?" Quinn asked. "Now I'm starting to remember," Luna said, tilting her head to look up at him. "You've given me that, Quinn. You've given me a reason to hope again." Quinn kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her hair. "I want to give you everything," he said. "I want to give you the home and the family and the life you deserve. I know it's fast, I know we're still figuring this out, but I need you to know that my intentions are serious. I'm not playing games with your heart." "I know you're not," Luna said. She turned in his arms so she could face him fully. "I trust you, Quinn." "That's something I never thought I'd be able to say to a man again, but I do. I trust you completely." They kissed again, long and slow, and Quinn felt himself getting lost in her, in the taste and feel and rightness of having her in his arms. When they finally pulled apart, he knew they had reached another turning point, another line crossed that brought them closer to something permanent and real. The winter days continued to pass, each one bringing Quinn and Luna closer together. They fell into the rhythm of people who had been together far longer than a few weeks, anticipating each other's needs, working together with an ease that felt almost magical. Quinn found himself looking for excuses to be near her, to touch her, to make her smile. And Luna bloomed under his attention, the shadows in her eyes gradually giving way to something brighter, something that looked like genuine happiness. They kissed often now, stolen moments throughout the day that left them both breathless and wanting more. But Quinn was determined to do this right, to court her properly despite the unusual circumstances that had brought them together. He wanted her to know that he valued her, that she was more to him than just a convenient, warm body in his house. A month after the blizzard, Quinn decided it was time to make his intentions even clearer. He rode into Reading one morning, his saddlebags weighted with purpose. He stopped first at the general store, where he purchased fabric in soft blues and greens that would look beautiful against Luna's coloring. Then he visited the jeweler, a tiny shop run by an old German man named Klaus, who had a reputation for fine craftsmanship. "I need a ring," Quinn told him. "Something special." Klaus looked at him shrewdly. "You have finally found yourself a woman worthy of jewelry, young Jameson." "I've found the woman I want to spend my life with," Quinn said simply. Klaus's weathered face split into a wide smile. Then we shall make you something she will treasure forever." They spent an hour looking at designs, discussing stones and settings. Quinn finally settled on a simple gold band with a modest diamond, nothing ostentatious but beautiful in its simplicity. Klaus promised to have it ready within the week. Quinn was leaving the jeweler's shop when he nearly collided with a man in an expensive suit, who was studying the buildings along Main Street with obvious distaste. Something about the man made Quinn's instincts prickle, and when the stranger turned to face him, Quinn knew immediately who he was looking at. Charles Brennan was a medium-sized man with slicked back hair and cold eyes that assessed Quinn like he was calculating his worth down to the penny. He wore city clothes that marked him as an outsider, and his smooth hands had never seen a day of real work in their life. "Excuse me," Brennan said, his voice oily and insincere. "Perhaps you can help me. I'm looking for someone. A young woman, early 20s, dark hair. Her name is Luna Abbott, and she ran away from my establishment in Sacramento. I'm told someone in this area might have seen her." Quinn kept his expression neutral, though every muscle in his body tensed for a fight. "Can't say I have. This is ranching country. We don't see many strangers, especially not in winter." Brennan's eyes narrowed. "She stole from me, money and valuables. I'm prepared to offer a substantial reward for information leading to her return." "I'm sure the sheriff would be interested in hearing about that," Quinn said evenly. "Have you filed a report?" Something flickered across Brennan's face, annoyance mixed with calculation. "The law can be slow," he said. "I prefer to handle my own problems. If you do happen to see this woman, there's $50 in it for you if you bring me word." "I'll keep that in mind," Quinn lied. "Good luck with your search." He moved past Brennan, every nerve screaming at him to get back to the ranch to make sure Luna was safe. But he forced himself to walk normally, to not give anything away. He collected his horse and headed out of town at a steady pace, only letting the animal run once they were well out of sight. Luna was in the kitchen when he burst through the door, and she spun around with a startled gasp. "Quinn, what's wrong?" "Brennan's in town," Quinn said, bolting the door behind him. "I ran into him outside the jeweler's. He's offering money for information about you." All the color drained from Luna's face. "He came back," she whispered. "I knew he would. What did you tell him?" "That I hadn't seen anyone matching your description," Quinn said, moving to her and taking her by the shoulders. "Luna, listen to me. He's not going to find you here, I'll make sure of that, but we need to be smart about this." "Maybe I should leave," Luna said, her voice shaking. "If I go, he won't have any reason to bother you. I could head further north, maybe Oregon or Washington Territory." "The hell you will," Quinn said fiercely. "You're not running again, Luna. This is your home. We face this together." "But Quinn, he's dangerous. If he figures out I'm here, if he tries to take me by force, there could be trouble. Real trouble." "Then there will be trouble," Quinn said. "But you're not facing it alone, and you're sure as hell not running into the wilderness in the middle of winter. We'll figure this out." Luna threw her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. "I'm so scared," she admitted. "Not just of him finding me, but of what he might do to you because you're protecting me." Quinn held her tight, one hand stroking through her hair. "I'm not afraid of Charles Brennan. Men like him are bullies who prey on the weak and helpless. But you're not helpless anymore, and you've got me standing with you. That changes everything." They spent the rest of the day preparing, though for what they weren't entirely sure. Quinn made sure his rifle was loaded and within easy reach, and he showed Luna where he kept his pistol in case of emergency. He hated the idea of her having to defend herself, but he would rather she be prepared than caught off guard. That night, they didn't sleep apart. Quinn wasn't willing to leave Luna alone in the bedroom while Brennan was in the area. And Luna didn't protest. when he suggested they stay together in the main room. They built up the fire high, and Quinn settled into his armchair with his rifle across his lap, while Luna wrapped herself in blankets on the sofa. "Tell me something good," Luna said softly into the darkness. "Something to think about besides him." Quinn thought for a moment. "I went to the jeweler's today," he said. "I commissioned something. A ring." He heard Luna's sharp intake of breath. "A ring? I was going to wait, do this properly," Quinn admitted. "Take you into town for a nice dinner, maybe go for a walk by the river. But I don't want to wait anymore, Luna. I don't need more time to know what I want. I want you. I want a life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. I want to build something real and lasting with you." Luna was crying. He could hear it in her voice. "Are you asking me to marry you?" "I'm asking you to be my wife," Quinn said. "I'm asking you to let me love you for the rest of our lives. I'm asking you to trust me to keep you safe and make you happy. I know the circumstances aren't ideal. I know we're dealing with Brennan and everything is complicated, but my feelings for you aren't complicated. They're the simplest, clearest thing I've ever known." Luna got up from the sofa and came to him, kneeling in front of his chair. In the firelight, her face was luminous, her eyes shining with tears and something that looked like joy. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you. I'll be your wife and build a life with you and trust you with everything I am." Quinn pulled her up into his lap, setting the rifle carefully aside, and kissed her with all the love and promise he could pour into the gesture. She kissed him back with equal fervor, her arms wrapped around his neck, and for a while they forgot about Brennan and danger and everything else except each other. "I love you," Quinn murmured against her lips. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes." "I love you too," Luna whispered back. "You saved my life, Quinn. Not just from the cold, but from everything. You gave me a reason to want to live again." They held each other through the night, dozing occasionally but mostly just being together, drawing strength and comfort from each other's presence. When dawn came, painting the snow-covered world in shades of pink and gold, they were still tangled together in the chair, and Quinn felt more at peace than he had in years, despite the threat looming over them. The next few days were tense. Quinn stayed close to the house, doing only the most essential work and keeping watch for any sign of trouble. Sheriff Wilder rode out on the third day, and Quinn invited him in with relief. "Thought you should know that Brennan left town yesterday," Tom said, accepting a cup of coffee from Luna with a polite nod. "But he was making noise about coming back, about how he knew the woman he was looking for was somewhere in the area and he would find her eventually." "What can we do legally?" Quinn asked. "Is there any way to protect her?" Tom rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "If you two were married, he'd have a harder time claiming any authority over her. A woman's husband has more legal standing than some hotel owner from another town. Especially if there's no actual evidence of theft, which I'm guessing there isn't." "There isn't," Luna confirmed. "I never stole anything from him. He's lying because I refused his advances." "Then marriage would be your best protection," Tom said. "I could do it myself if you wanted. I'm authorized to perform the ceremony." Quinn looked at Luna, raising an eyebrow in question. She looked back at him and he saw the answer in her eyes before she spoke. "How soon?" she asked the sheriff. "Right now if you want," Tom said. "I've got my book in my saddlebag." "It won't be fancy, but it will be legal and binding." "Let's do it," Quinn said decisively. He stood and held out his hand to Luna. "I know this isn't the wedding you probably dreamed about, but I promise you will do something special later, something to celebrate properly. But right now, I want you to be my wife. I want you to have the protection that comes with that." Luna took his hand, her fingers trembling slightly but her voice steady. "I don't need fancy, Quinn. I just need you." Tom Wilder smiled and retrieved his book. And right there in Quinn's small ranch house, with no flowers or guests or ceremony, Luna Abbott became Luna Jameson. The vows were simple and traditional, but when Quinn slipped the plain gold band that had been his mother's onto Luna's finger and promised to love and protect her for the rest of his days, he meant every word with his entire being. When Tom pronounced them husband and wife, Quinn kissed his bride with a tenderness that made the sheriff politely look away. Luna kissed him back, and in that moment, all the fear and uncertainty faded into something that felt like hope, like promise, like the beginning of something beautiful. "Congratulations," Tom said, shaking Quinn's hand and tipping his hat to Luna. "I'll file the papers as soon as I get back to town, and Quinn, you're a lucky man." "I know," Quinn said, pulling Luna close to his side. "Believe me, I know." After the sheriff left, Quinn and Luna stood together in the middle of the room, just holding each other and processing what had just happened. They were married. She was his wife. He was her husband. The words felt surreal and perfect all at once. "Mrs. Jameson," Quinn said softly, testing out the name. Luna smiled up at him. "I like the sound of that." "So do I," Quinn said. He cupped her face in his hands. "I know this wasn't how either of us imagined our wedding day, but I meant every word of those vows, Luna. You're mine now, and I'm yours, and nothing and no one is going to change that." "I meant them too," Luna said. "For better or worse, in sickness and health, until death do us part, I'm with you, Quinn. Forever." They kissed again, and this time there was a new quality to it, a sense of belonging and permanence that hadn't been there before. They were building something together now, something that would last. That night, they came together as husband and wife for the first time, and it was gentle and sweet and more meaningful than either of them had anticipated. Quinn was careful with Luna, mindful of her past trauma, making sure she felt safe and cherished every moment. And Luna gave herself to him completely, trusting him with her body and her heart in a way she had never trusted anyone before. Afterward, they lay tangled together in Quinn's bed, their bed now, and Luna traced patterns on his chest with her fingertips. "I never thought I could feel this happy," she admitted. "After my mother died, after what happened with Brennan, I thought that part of my life was over. I thought I would spend the rest of my days just surviving, just getting by." "You're going to do more than survive," Quinn promised. "You're going to thrive. We both are. We're going to build a good life here, Luna. We're going to have children if you want them, grow old together, make memories that will last forever." "I want that," Luna whispered. "I want all of it, with you." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and for the first time since the blizzard, Luna slept without nightmares. The weeks that followed their wedding were some of the happiest of Quinn's life. Having Luna as his wife, being able to touch her and hold her and call her his without any barriers between them, felt like a dream he never wanted to wake from. They fell into a rhythm that was comfortable and right, working together during the day and coming together each night with a passion that never seemed to fade. The ring Quinn had commissioned arrived 2 weeks after their impromptu wedding, and he presented it to her over dinner one evening. Luna's eyes filled with tears when she saw the delicate gold band with its modest diamond, and she held out her hand so he could slip it onto her finger alongside his mother's ring. "It's perfect," she breathed. "Quinn, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." "Not nearly as beautiful as you," Quinn said, and he meant it. Luna had blossomed in the weeks since their marriage, the last shadows finally fading from her eyes, replaced by a light and joy that made his heart swell every time he looked at her. Winter gradually gave way to early spring, and with the changing seasons came new work and new routines. Quinn began teaching Luna about the ranch, showing her how to care for the animals, how to read the land and the weather, how to manage the business side of running a cattle operation. She proved to be a quick study, picking up skills that some people took years to learn. They were mending a section of fence together one warm April afternoon when they saw a rider approaching from the direction of town. Quinn tensed immediately, his hand moving instinctively to the rifle he now carried whenever they were outside. But as the rider got closer, he recognized Sheriff Wilder's distinctive gray horse and relaxed slightly. Tom dismounted and approached them with a serious expression that put Quinn back on alert. "Afternoon," the sheriff said. "Sorry to bother you, but I thought you should know. Charles Brennan is back in town." Luna's face went pale and Quinn moved immediately to her side, one arm wrapping protectively around her waist. "What does he want?" Quinn asked, his voice hard. "Same thing as before," Tom said. "He's asking questions, offering money for information. But this time he's being more aggressive about it. He's been hinting that he knows the woman he's looking for is married to someone in the area, and he's threatening legal action for harboring a fugitive." "She's not a fugitive," Quinn said flatly. "She never stole anything from him, and she's my legal wife. He has no claim on her." "I know that, and you know that," Tom said. "But Brennan is the type to cause problems just because he can. He's staying at the hotel in town, and he's been making himself visible, letting people know he's not leaving until he gets what he came for." Quinn felt Luna trembling against his side, and his protective instincts roared to life. "Then he's going to be disappointed," Quinn said. "Luna is my wife, and this is our land. He has no right to be here, no right to harass us." "I agree," Tom said. "But Quinn, you need to be smart about this. Brennan is looking for an excuse to cause trouble, maybe even provoke you into doing something that would give him legal grounds to act. Don't give him that satisfaction." "What do you suggest?" Quinn asked, though he had a feeling he wasn't going to like the answer. "Stay out of town for a while," Tom said. "Let me handle Brennan. If he doesn't get any reaction, if nobody takes his bait, he'll eventually get bored and leave. But if you go into town looking for a fight, it could get ugly fast." Quinn wanted to argue, wanted to ride into Reading right then and confront Brennan face to face, to make it clear that Luna was under his protection and beyond the man's reach. But he looked down at his wife, saw the fear in her eyes, and knew that Tom was right. He couldn't afford to let his temper get the better of him, not when Luna's safety was at stake. "All right," he said reluctantly. "We'll stay here. But Tom, if he comes out to the ranch, if he sets one foot on my property, all bets are off." "Fair enough," Tom said. "Just don't go looking for trouble. Let trouble come to you if it's going to come at all." After the sheriff left, Quinn and Luna went back inside the house. Luna was shaking, and Quinn guided her to the sofa, sitting down and pulling her into his lap. She buried her face in his neck, and he felt hot tears against his skin. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "This is all my fault. You should never have gotten mixed up in this." "Don't," Quinn said firmly, tilting her face up so she had to look at him. "Don't apologize for existing, Luna. Don't apologize for being the victim of that bastard's obsession. You did nothing wrong. Nothing. The only person at fault here is Brennan, and I'll be damned if I let him make you feel guilty for surviving." "But he's not going to give up," Luna said. "You heard what Tom said. He's not leaving until he gets what he came for. What if he never leaves? What if we have to live like this forever, always looking over our shoulders?" "Then we'll deal with it," Quinn said. "Together. You're my wife, Luna. I made vows to protect you, and I meant them. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, we'll face this together." Luna clung to him, and Quinn held her tight, silently cursing Charles Brennan and everything he represented. He had never been a violent man, had always believed in solving problems with words and common sense rather than fists or guns. But right now, holding his terrified wife in his arms, he found himself wishing for a chance to meet Brennan in a dark alley somewhere and teach him what happened to men who preyed on vulnerable women. The next few days were tense. Quinn and Luna stayed close to the ranch, going about their work but always alert, always watching. Quinn made sure Luna was never alone, that she was always within shouting distance, and he kept weapons close at hand wherever they were working. It was 5 days after Tom's visit when Charles Brennan finally showed his face at the ranch. Quinn and Luna were in the barn, tending to a mare that was close to foaling, when they heard the sound of a horse approaching. Quinn immediately moved to put himself between Luna and the barn door, his hand on the pistol at his hip. Brennan rode right up to the barn entrance, sitting on his horse like he owned the place, his cold eyes sweeping over the property with obvious disdain. When his gaze landed on Luna, half hidden behind Quinn, something ugly and possessive flashed across his face. "So this is where you have been hiding," Brennan said, his voice smooth as oil. "Luna, my dear, you have caused me quite a bit of trouble. I think it's time you came home." "This is her home," Quinn said, his voice hard as stone. "And you're trespassing. Get off my land." Brennan's eyes shifted to Quinn, assessing him with open contempt. "You must be the cowboy who's been hiding her. Tell me, did she tell you she's a thief? Did she mention that she stole nearly $200 from my hotel safe before she ran?" "She told me you're a liar and a predator who tried to force yourself on her," Quinn said flatly. "And that's all I need to know. Now get off my property before I make you leave." "I have legal recourse," Brennan said, though his confident tone wavered slightly. "I've filed charges in Sacramento. There's a warrant for her arrest. Then you can take that warrant to Sheriff Wilder and he can handle it through proper channels," Quinn said. "But right now, you're on private property without permission, which makes you the criminal here. Leave. Now." Brennan's face flushed with anger. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, cowboy. I have money, I have connections. I could make your life very difficult." "And you have no idea who you're threatening," Quinn said, his hand tightening on his pistol. "I don't care about your money or your connections. Luna is my wife, legally married, and she's under my protection. If you come near her again, if you set foot on my land again, I will respond accordingly." Am I making myself clear? For a long moment, the two men stared at each other, tension crackling in the air like lightning about to strike. Then Brennan's eyes shifted back to Luna, and his expression twisted into something cruel and ugly. "This isn't over," he said. "You think you've won, but you haven't. She'll always be mine, no matter whose bed she's warming. And when I'm done destroying your reputation and your livelihood, we'll see how devoted you are to protecting her." He wheeled his horse around and rode off, and Quinn watched him go with every muscle tensed for action. Only when Brennan was completely out of sight did he turn back to Luna, who was standing frozen with one hand pressed to her mouth. "Are you all right?" Quinn asked, moving to her immediately. Luna nodded, then shook her head, then suddenly she was sobbing, great heaving gasps that shook her entire body. Quinn pulled her into his arms, holding her while she cried out all the fear and stress and trauma that had been building inside her. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying between sobs. "I'm so sorry you had to see that, had to deal with that." "Stop apologizing," Quinn said gently but firmly. "You have nothing to be sorry for, Luna. Nothing. That man is poison, and we're going to figure out how to get him out of our lives for good." He led her back to the house and settled her by the fire, then rode immediately to town to find Sheriff Wilder. He found Tom in his office, and the lawman listened with a grim expression as Quinn recounted what had happened. "He's escalating," Tom said. "That's not good. Men like Brennan are most dangerous when they feel like they're losing control." He pulled out a folder from his desk. "I did some checking after he came back. Sent some wires to Sacramento. Turns out Charles Brennan has a reputation there." He's been accused before of inappropriate conduct with his female employees, but nothing ever stuck because he has friends in high places who make the charges disappear. So he's done this before, Quinn said, his hands clenching into fists. He's targeted other women. It looks that way, Tom confirmed. But here's the thing. I also confirmed that there is no warrant for Luna's arrest, no charges filed in Sacramento. Brennan was lying about that, which means we can use it against him if we're smart. What do you suggest? Quinn asked. I'm going to pay Mr. Brennan a visit, Tom said, standing and reaching for his hat. I'm going to make it very clear that lying to a peace officer about criminal charges is itself a crime, and that if he continues to harass a married woman on private property, I will arrest him for trespassing and disturbing the peace. And I'm going to suggest very strongly that he return to Sacramento before things get worse for him. You think he'll listen? Quinn asked skeptically. Men like Brennan are bullies, Tom said. They're brave when they think they have all the power, but when someone stands up to them with actual legal authority, they usually fold. Let me handle this, Quinn. You go home to your wife and make sure she knows she's safe. Quinn wanted to be there when Tom confronted Brennan, wanted to see the look on the bastard's face when the sheriff called him out on his lies. But he also knew that Luna needed him more, that she was back at the ranch probably terrified and blaming herself for everything. So he thanked Tom and rode back home as fast as his horse could carry him. He found Luna in their bedroom, curled up on the bed with her arms wrapped around herself. She looked up when he entered, her eyes red from crying, and Quinn's heart broke a little at the sight. Tom's handling it, he said, sitting on the edge of the bed and reaching out to stroke her hair. He's going to confront Brennan, make it clear that there are consequences if he keeps this up. And if it doesn't work? Luna asked, her voice small and scared. Then we'll figure something else out, Quinn promised. But Luna, I need you to hear me. This is not your fault. You are not responsible for that man's actions or his obsession. You did nothing wrong. Nothing. Do you understand me? Luna nodded slowly, then sat up and moved into his arms. Quinn held her close, resting his chin on top of her head, and sent up a silent prayer that Tom would be successful, that this nightmare would finally end. 2 days later, Tom Wilder rode out to the ranch again, and this time he was smiling. Brennan left town this morning, he announced. I had a very productive conversation with him about the legal consequences of harassment, false accusations, and trespassing. I also may have mentioned that some of my friends in Sacramento might be interested in hearing about his pattern of inappropriate behavior with his employees. He's really gone? Luna asked, hope flickering in her eyes. He's really gone, Tom confirmed. And I made it very clear that if he ever comes back to Redding, he'll be arrested on sight. I can't promise he won't try to cause trouble from Sacramento, but I don't think he will. Men like him prefer easy targets, and you two have proven to be anything but easy. Luna burst into tears, but this time they were tears of relief, and Quinn pulled her close while thanking Tom profusely. The sheriff waved off his gratitude, saying he was just doing his job, but Quinn knew better. Tom had gone above and beyond to protect them, and that was something Quinn would never forget. After Tom left, Quinn and Luna stood together on their porch, watching the sun set over the mountains in the distance. The air was warm with the promise of summer, and for the first time in months, Quinn felt like he could finally breathe easy. It's over, Luna said softly, leaning against his side. It's really over. It's over, Quinn confirmed, wrapping his arm around her waist. And now we get to focus on what really matters. Building our life together. Luna looked up at him, and the smile on her face was like sunshine breaking through clouds. I love you, Quinn Jameson. I love you too, Luna Jameson, Quinn said, and kissed her as the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in shades of gold and pink. The months that followed were peaceful and productive. With the threat of Brennan finally behind them, Quinn and Luna threw themselves into making the ranch not just a place to live but a true home. Luna planted a garden near the house, coaxing vegetables and flowers from the stubborn California soil. Quinn expanded the herd, making deals with neighboring ranchers and slowly building their operation into something more substantial. They worked side by side during the day and fell into each other's arms at night, and Quinn had never been happier. Luna was everything he had never known he wanted, strong and capable but also soft and loving, with a laugh that could brighten his darkest moods, and a touch that could make him forget everything except the two of them. It was early autumn when Luna told him she was expecting a baby. They were sitting on the porch after dinner, watching the stars come out when she took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "There's someone new joining us," she said softly. "In about 6 months, maybe 7. Quinn stared at her, his mind struggling to process what she was saying. Then understanding dawned, and he felt joy so intense it almost hurt flooding through his entire being. "A baby," he whispered. "We're having a baby," Luna nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Are you happy?" "Happy." Quinn pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was made of glass. "Luna, I'm beyond happy. I'm terrified and thrilled and so in love with you I can barely stand it. We're going to be parents." They held each other and cried together, overwhelmed by the enormity of what lay ahead. Quinn had always wanted children someday, but now that it was real, now that Luna was carrying his child, the abstract concept became something concrete and precious and infinitely important. The pregnancy was not easy. Luna suffered from terrible sickness in the early months, barely able to keep food down, and Quinn hovered over her like a worried mother hen. He took over all the heavy work, refusing to let her lift anything heavier than a dish, and he spent his evenings reading every book about childbirth and babies that he could get his hands on from the small library in Redding. But as Luna's belly grew and the sickness faded, she bloomed again, radiating health and happiness. Quinn loved watching her body change, loved feeling the baby kick against his hand when he placed it on her swollen stomach, loved talking to the child through Luna's skin, and imagining what their son or daughter would be like. They spent the winter preparing, turning the small storage room off their bedroom into a nursery. Luna sewed tiny clothes and blankets while Quinn built a cradle from wood he carefully selected and sanded until it was smooth as silk. They argued good-naturedly about names, each proposing options that the other vetoed, until finally they had a short list for both a boy and a girl. Luna went into labor on a cold February night, almost exactly a year after Quinn had found her frozen at his gate. He had ridden to town earlier in the week to fetch the midwife, a capable woman named Martha, who had delivered most of the babies in the area for the past 20 years. Martha had agreed to stay at the ranch as Luna's time drew near, and Quinn had never been more grateful for anything as when the labor pains started, and Martha was there to take charge. The labor lasted through the night and into the next day, and Quinn spent every moment of it holding Luna's hand, wiping her forehead with cool cloths, and telling her how strong she was, how proud he was of her, how much he loved her. Luna screamed and cried and cursed him for getting her into this situation, and Quinn took it all with good humor, knowing she didn't mean any of it. Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, their baby was born. The sound of a newborn's cry filled the house, and Quinn felt tears streaming down his face as Martha cleaned and wrapped the infant before placing the tiny bundle in Luna's exhausted arms. "It's a boy," Martha announced with a smile. A healthy, strong boy. Quinn looked down at his son, at the tiny red face and the wisps of dark hair, and felt his entire world shift on its axis once again. He had thought he knew what love was, had thought his feelings for Luna were the deepest emotion he could experience. But looking at this tiny person, this perfect combination of him and the woman he loved, Quinn discovered new depths to his heart he hadn't known existed. "He's perfect," Luna whispered, gazing at their son with wonder. "Quinn, look what we made." "He's amazing," Quinn agreed, carefully touching one tiny fist with his finger. The baby's hand opened and closed around his finger, gripping with surprising strength, and Quinn felt his heart melt completely. What should we name him? They had narrowed it down to 2 names for a boy, and now Luna looked up at Quinn with a soft smile. "Thomas," she said, "after the man who helped us when we needed it most. Thomas Quinn Jameson." "Thomas Quinn Jameson," Quinn repeated, testing the name. "That's perfect, Tommy for short." They spent the next few hours just staring at their son, marveling at his tiny fingers and toes, his perfect little nose, the way he made small sounds and movements even in sleep. Martha showed them how to nurse him, how to change him, how to swaddle him so he felt secure. And when the midwife finally left the next morning, Quinn and Luna were alone with their son, a family of 3 instead of 2. The early weeks were exhausting. Tommy was a good baby but still demanded constant attention, needing to be fed every few hours around the clock. Quinn and Luna took turns getting up with him at night, stumbling through the darkness to tend to their crying son. They were both perpetually exhausted, but neither of them complained. This was what they had wanted, what they had dreamed of, and the love they felt for their tiny son made every sleepless night worth it. As Tommy grew from a newborn to an infant, his personality began to emerge. He had Luna's honey-colored eyes and Quinn's dark hair, and he was curious about everything, always wanting to see and touch and explore. Quinn loved coming in from his work to find Luna sitting in the rocking chair he had made for her, nursing Tommy while she hummed soft lullabies. Life on the ranch fell into a new rhythm, one that revolved around their son's needs and schedules. The work still had to be done. The cattle still needed tending, but now there was this other dimension to their lives, this precious person who depended on them for everything. Tommy was 6 months old when Quinn and Luna decided they should go into town for a proper celebration. It had been over a year since their hasty wedding, and Luna had never had the chance to wear a nice dress or have the kind of ceremony she probably deserved. So Quinn made arrangements with the church in Reading to renew their vows, and he commissioned Luna a beautiful dress from the dressmaker in town. The ceremony was small but lovely, attended by Sheriff Tom Wilder, the midwife Martha, and a handful of other people from town who had befriended the young couple. Luna wore her new dress, a beautiful creation in soft blue that made her eyes shine, and she carried wildflowers that Quinn had picked for her that morning. Tommy, dressed in a tiny suit that Luna had sewn herself, was passed between the guests and gurgled happily through the entire ceremony. When Quinn and Luna repeated their vows in front of the small congregation, it felt different than it had the first time. Then, they had been desperate and scared, focused on survival and protection. Now, standing together with their son as witness, they were making promises from a place of love and security, promising to continue building the life they had already started. "I, Quinn Jameson, take you, Luna Jameson, to be my wife," Quinn said, holding both of her hands in his. "I promise to love you in good times and bad, to support you in all your dreams, to be your partner in raising our children, and to cherish you for all the days of my life. You came into my life when I least expected it, and you've made me happier than I ever thought possible. I love you, Luna." With everything I am, I love you." Luna was crying as she recited her own vows. "I, Luna Jameson, take you, Quinn Jameson, to be my husband. You saved my life in more ways than one, and every day since has been a gift I never thought I would receive. I promise to love you fiercely, to stand by your side through whatever comes, to be the best wife and mother I can be, and to never stop being grateful for the day that storm brought me to your gate. You gave me hope when I had none. You gave me love when I thought I was unlovable, and you gave me a home and a family. I love you, Quinn, forever and always." There wasn't a dry eye in the church when they finished, and when the pastor pronounced them husband and wife for the second time, Quinn kissed Luna with all the love and passion he felt for her, not caring who was watching. The celebration afterward was joyful and warm, with food and music and dancing. Quinn held Luna in his arms and they swayed to the fiddle music, while Tommy slept peacefully in Martha's arms nearby. It was perfect, Quinn thought. This was everything he had ever wanted, everything he had never dared to dream he might have. As the years passed, Quinn and Luna's life together continued to deepen and grow. The ranch prospered under their joint management, becoming known throughout the region for quality cattle and fair dealing. Luna proved to have a head for business, managing the books and negotiating sales with a skill that impressed even the most hardened ranchers. Tommy grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved following his father around the ranch, learning everything he could about animals and land management. When he was 3, Luna became pregnant again, and this time she carried the baby with much less difficulty than the first time. Their daughter was born in the spring, and they named her Sarah after Quinn's mother. Sarah had Quinn's dark hair and Luna's delicate features, and from the moment she was born, she had her father completely wrapped around her tiny finger. 2 years after Sarah came another son, whom they named James. And then, when Luna was 31 and Quinn was 33, they had one final child, a daughter they named Grace. Their home was full and loud and chaotic, and Quinn couldn't imagine anything more perfect. The children grew up knowing they were loved, surrounded by the security and stability that both Quinn and Luna had lacked in their own childhoods. Tommy became a skilled horseman and took over much of the day-to-day ranch work as he got older. Sarah showed an interest in her mother's sewing and cooking, but she also loved helping with the animals. James was the quiet one, always reading or drawing, content to spend hours observing the world around him. And Grace, the baby, was fearless and adventurous, keeping both her parents on their toes with her constant explorations. Quinn and Luna watched their children grow with pride and joy, but they never lost sight of each other. Even with 4 children and a busy ranch to manage, they made time for each other, still sitting together on the porch in the evenings after the children were asleep, still holding hands and talking about their day. The passion between them never faded, and neither did the deep friendship and partnership that formed the foundation of their marriage. When Tommy turned 18 and announced that he wanted to expand the ranch, to buy the neighboring property and increase their operation, Quinn and Luna agreed. They had worked hard for 20 years to build something stable and successful, and now they were in a position to pass that legacy on to their children. The day Tommy closed the deal on the new land, Quinn stood with his arm around Luna's waist, watching their son shake hands with the seller, and felt a profound sense of accomplishment. They had done it. They had taken the desperate circumstances of that winter night 20 years ago and transformed them into something beautiful and lasting. "Can you believe it's been 20 years?" Luna asked softly, leaning her head on Quinn's shoulder. 20 years since you found me at your gate." "Best decision I ever made," Quinn said, kissing the top of her head. "Bringing you home, loving you, building this life with you. I wouldn't change a single moment of it. Not even the hard parts, Luna asked with a slight smile. Not even Brennan or the difficult births or the sleepless nights. Not even those, Quinn confirmed. Because all of it, every struggle and challenge led us to right here, to our children, to our home, to this life we've built together. I'd go through it all again in a heartbeat if it meant ending up here with you. Luna turned in his arms, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. I love you, Quinn Jameson, just as much today as I did 20 years ago, maybe even more. I love you too, Luna Jameson, Quinn said, and kissed her as the sun set over their land, over the home they had built, over the legacy they would leave to their children. The years continued to pass, marked by the milestones of their children's lives. Sarah married a good man from a neighboring ranch when she was 22, and Luna cried happy tears at the wedding. James went to San Francisco to study art, though he always came home for holidays and brought his sketches and paintings to share with his proud parents. Grace became a teacher in Redding, educating the children of the town where her parents had once faced their greatest challenge. And Tommy stayed on the ranch, eventually taking over complete management from Quinn when his father reached his 50s and started to slow down. He married a sweet woman named Elizabeth, and they gave Quinn and Luna their first grandchildren, carrying on the Jameson name and legacy. Quinn and Luna settled into a comfortable retirement, still living on the ranch but letting Tommy and his family handle most of the daily work. They spent their days working in Luna's now extensive gardens, taking long rides through the property they had spent a lifetime building, and spoiling their growing collection of grandchildren. On their 30th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered at the ranch for a massive celebration. All 4 of their children were there, along with their spouses and children, and the house rang with laughter and love. After dinner, Quinn stood and raised his glass, calling for everyone's attention. 30 years ago, he said, his voice strong despite his age, I found a woman frozen at my gate. She was dying, desperate, and she had every reason to never trust another person as long as she lived. But she chose to trust me. She chose to stay. And she changed my life in ways I'm still discovering. He looked at Luna, who was wiping tears from her eyes, and smiled. I told you that night that you would never be cold or alone again, and I've spent the last 30 years making sure I kept that promise. You've given me 4 incredible children, more grandchildren than I can keep count of, and a lifetime of love and partnership that exceeds anything I ever imagined possible. You are my heart, Luna Jameson. You always have been, and you always will be. The entire family erupted in applause and cheers, and Luna stood and moved into Quinn's arms, holding him tight while their children and grandchildren celebrated around them. You kept your promise, she whispered in his ear. Every day for 30 years, you kept your promise. I've never been cold and I've never been alone. You gave me everything, Quinn. We gave each other everything, Quinn corrected gently. That's what love is, Luna. It's 2 people choosing each other every day no matter what comes, and I choose you. Today, tomorrow, and every day for the rest of our lives. They kissed while their family cheered, and Quinn felt the same flutter of joy in his chest that he had felt 30 years ago when he first kissed his frozen bride by the fire. Some things, he thought, never changed. And some loves were strong enough to last forever. As the sun set on their 30th anniversary celebration, Quinn and Luna stood together on their porch, just as they had done thousands of times before. Their children and grandchildren were still inside, the sounds of laughter and conversation drifting out through the open windows. The ranch stretched out before them, golden in the evening light, a testament to everything they had built together. You ever think about that night? Luna asked softly. The night of the blizzard, all the time, Quinn admitted. I think about how close I came to not finding you, to riding past in the storm. I think about how different my life would have been if I hadn't seen you there at the gate. Empty, Luna said simply. Both our lives would have been empty. Instead, we have all this. She gestured to the house behind them, to the land around them, to the family that filled every corner of their world. We have everything. We do, Quinn agreed, pulling her close. And it all started with one frozen night and a promise I've spent 30 years keeping. Luna smiled up at him, her face still beautiful despite the lines that time had etched there, her eyes still bright with the love and trust she had given him so long ago. And will you keep that promise for 30 more years? She asked. Quinn kissed her softly, tenderly, with all the love of 3 decades behind it. For 30 more years, he said, and for every year after that until the very end. You'll never be cold or alone again, Luna. That's my promise, and I'll keep it until the day I die. They stood together as the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky. 2 people who had found each other in the midst of a storm and had built a life that weathered every challenge that came their way. Behind them, their family laughed and celebrated, the legacy of their love made manifest in the children and grandchildren who carried their story forward into the future. And in the warmth of that California evening, with Luna in his arms and their life spread out before them like a beautiful tapestry, Quinn knew that finding her at his gate that frozen night had been the greatest blessing of his life. She had transformed him from a lonely rancher into a husband, a father, a grandfather. She had filled his empty house with love and laughter and life. She had given him everything, and he had kept his promise. Through 30 years of marriage, 4 children, countless challenges, and all the joys and sorrows that life had brought them, he had kept his promise. Luna had never been cold, and she had never been alone. She had been loved, cherished, and protected every single day. As they walked back into their home together, hand in hand as they had walked through life for 30 years, Quinn felt a deep contentment settle over him. This was what happiness looked like. This was what it meant to live a good life, to love well, to build something that would last long after they were gone. The story that had begun with a desperate woman frozen at a gate and a cowboy with a promise had become something far greater than either of them could have imagined. It had become a family, a legacy, a love story that would be told to their grandchildren's grandchildren, a testament to the power of choosing love over fear, hope over despair, and togetherness over loneliness. And as Quinn held Luna close that night, listening to her breathe beside him as he had done for 30 years, he whispered one more time the words that had started it all, the promise that had changed both their lives forever. You'll never be cold or alone again, my love. Never again. And she never was.